podcast. My name is Andrew, and I'm the editor for the Current Review.
I am Matt, and I'm the founder of Living EVs.
I am Andre from the YouTube channel The Electric Norwegian.
Cool.
So we have you on today because you've driven a bunch of very interesting electric cars, and we'd like to talk to you about them. So we know that you've driven the Porsche Taycan. Can you give us a brief overview of that vehicle?
It's a four-door sports saloon, I guess you would call it. But started as a concept in 2015 as the Mission E, and then was launched, earlier this year. People compare it to the Tesla. It isn't, because the Tesla is a completely different product and competes in a different market segment. The only thing they have in common is that they go very, very quickly in a straight line. Apart from that, the Porsche is a completely different product. It rides and handling and every other metric you can throw at it. Except in space. It is relatively cramped to be such a big car and pricey.
Yeah, I had that same problem when I got in the car. It feels closed in a little bit. I don't know why, but I like the big glass roof in the Taycan though. I think it's cool. Yeah. So did you get? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
No, you can ask a question.
No, you can ask a question.
No, you can ask it. I forgot
So how would you compare the interior quality versus, I don't know, how would you compare the overall interior quality and it's like a Porsche, we know that. So like how would you rank the materials inside the cabin?
I stopped caring about materials inside cabins for years, but experienced quality, or whatever you call it, it's kind of it doesn't necessarily say if the car is good or not. The Toyota works forever. It's made of crap plastics, but it is of course built to a different level of detail, and you can feel that, and you can see that, and it's great. It's a great place to be. It of course built to a different standard than, for instance, a Tesla. Is it as good as the Audi? I think there's a toss-up between them, because both of them are very, very good at building, using good materials and building cars with a high level of fit and finish. Do I agree with the layout on the screens? Not necessarily, but that's a personal thing, and that's my opinion. It's not necessarily, it shouldn't stop you from go buy one.
So how would you say the overall fit and finish is on the Taycan? Because there were some reports that the fit and finish was not extremely great on some of the early models.
Well, to be honest, the car we had, the press car, not the press car, the demo car, it actually had a rattle. Small rattle coming from somewhere behind me, probably in one of the rear doors. It's not a big issue, and I'm sure it's just a clip or something that's broken. But it's, people scream, "Oh, Tesla rattles and Tesla this," and then it's just you get the demo car from one of the best sports car manufacturers on earth, and it rattles. So, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So we know the Taycan has 2 gears. It has 2 planetary clutches.
Yeah.
Could you feel it?
It was very strange, because we all know the story about Tesla in the other days developing the Roadster, building in somewhere in Asia a 2-speed gearbox to get the metrics they wanted. Everything broke, and could not make it work, and then they just managed to make it work with 1 gear or a reduction, and then they just stick to it, and so does everybody else. And then you pass, I think, go above 130 kilometers an hour, which is, what's that?
Should be like 70,
Yeah,
75.
75, something like that. And it does that very quickly. So you don't have to go, oh, I'm going to speed now. You just floor it, wait a second, and then you blow every possible. So, you pass a car and there, oh, I have to brake now because I've done X kilometers an hour. But that's how any sports car. It's a very strange feeling because you floor it and then it just shoots and then it changes gear. It's like, what change? This is an electric car and it changes. It's just very strange.
So does it feel like more torque low down? Or it feels like you
Yeah,
have
yeah. It's much stronger and bottom range. The bottom range, it doesn't have a bottom range, but you know what I mean. My long range is, I think the numbers are relatively equal. It's not that far off. I'm not entirely sure of torque in the long range, the Tesla Model 3, but you feel the Porsche, the 4S that I drove, is much stronger in the entire from the off. It's just much more oomph, and it doesn't really. It's much more relentless, and it pulls a lot harder. So I didn't expect that. I was thinking, well, it's not that far off when you look at the numbers alone, but numbers doesn't tell you the feeling because it feels entirely different.
So what trim was that? Was that the 4S
The 4S.
Turbo?
Yeah, the 4S. Just
So
the 4S.
that was
just the 4S.
Just the 4S, yeah.
Yeah, because it's still a car demo. Let's see, base price in Norway is about 900,000 NOK, which is, for simplicity, let's just make that $90,000. No, not you. Yes, 90,000. But it's a Porsche, so every single thing you see costs money. Outdoor, as it stood, that was 1.4 million, which is 140,000. So that's let's see, that's a new standard range plus almost just in equipment.
So
that is a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So have you ever driven like a performance Model 3 or S or anything?
I've been lucky. I've driven now the S8s and Porsche 911s and Corvettes. That's 15 years ago now, but still. And I drove the Performance 3 before mine, just because the first demo cars that came to Norway last March, I think, or last year in March, they were performances. And I had my car in order, but it hadn't arrived yet. So the second I tested, you tested. And this was before the performance upgrades we've gotten. And it was probably the most ferocious thing I've ever come across. I've driven a Performance S, and I never, ever managed to give it 100% throttle because I didn't have the space. This was in the city. And apart from that, the 3, because it's more sporty, it's lighter, and it's more nimble. It is just incredibly ferocious.
Oh, when I, like you, the Performance Model S, I never had enough space to really do anything crazy in it. It was just down and then let go, let regen happen.
It still rips your head off though.
Oh yeah, Model 3 is. I really like the new, like the Model 3 driving characteristics, and so when I got into the Performance Model 3, it felt like my Model 3 standard range, and just with like twice the horsepower, like the same motor in the front, and it's I love it. I mean, really fast.
Now it has what, 70% more power, I think.
Something like that. It's a lot.
It's just the way it's delivered.
Yeah,
that's what gets you, because you can come with your Porsches and your Lambos and your V10s and all that stuff, and it's fantastic. It's great fun, but it's just you can't really match that.
Right.
Not for the price, anyway. I mean, in Norway, a performance costs, what's the new price? I think below 500,000 Norwegian, which is. This is not a correct conversion. I'm just making it very simple to say $50,000. And if you want anything with similar performance, that's 3 seconds. Where are you then, Lamborghini land?
You're pretty close to Lamborghini area there.
It's 3 million Norwegian. Probably, I don't know. That's six times the price.
You're right, yeah. So I
Mhm.
have a question about the Taycan. So when you let go of the accelerator in the Model 3,
Mhm.
it immediately regens. So
Yeah.
for the Porsche, you press the brake, right, and then regen happens, and then braking happens, right?
Yes, partly. You can put on some regen, but when you're used to and that's another thing with the Tesla. Nothing wrong with any other car maker out there with lots of good EVs, but the motor controller unit on the Teslas are fantastic because the millimeter precision on that is you can just modulate any speed with just moving your foot, tiny little
Yeah.
movements, and then you come to the Porsche, you lift off, and even when you put the regen on, because there's a toggle switch in the menu somewhere, it does regen a little bit, but they've decided to put all of the regen on the brakes, and the brakes are fantastic. I mean, look at those brakes.
The
They're
brake.
huge. They do stop the car rather well. And they blended the regen braking and everything else into very smoothly. So you don't, but it is a little bit when you use the one pedal driving, going back to actually using the pedal, it's slightly. Why do you do this? But that's their choice and it works, and that's how it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so on the topic of the Taycan, when you were saying how quick it is low in the low end, how would it compare to the Model 3 Performance, which is quicker on paper than the 4S? Would
I
you say the
haven't
Taycan is, would you say the Taycan feels quicker than the
I
Model
haven't
3 Performance?
I haven't driven the 3P in a year and a half, so I can't really say. But probably my experience with Teslas in general is that it is probably just obliterated that Porsche, simply because of the insane reactions of the sensitivity of the way the motors in the Teslas react in general, and but this was a 4S. I would imagine if it was a turbo or a turbo S, turbo or a turbo S, it would even the playing field quite a lot. And of course, I was just on the track with my car. Now it impressed me very much. But when it comes to steering field, brake field, just communications with the car, from a driving point of view, the Porsche is in a different league entirely. And you just drove the Mini, right?
No, I haven't driven the Mini, but I drove the i3 when I
Okay.
visited them. Yeah, and I
And
mean, besides a
it,
powertrain, front or rear wheel drive, they're basically same horsepower numbers. It's just the
yeah.
i3S motor.
Yeah, but yeah. The Mini is also, but on steering feel front, the Teslas are good, but the Mini and the Jag and the Porsche is in a different league. They're much more. I don't know. I just like the feel of those cars better. But when I came back, cause I've been. I remember the first time I owned a Porsche, an old, cool one, and then I drove a new one, a brand new 911S. A 997 in, I don't know, 2007 or something like that. I came back to my car, was like, ugh, this is boring, it's slow, it's noisy. You can drive that, I don't care, I don't want this car anymore. You know, you had that feeling, a letdown. And when I came back to the Tesla, I was prepared this is going to be, lower grade and all that. And it wasn't entirely. It felt like, how should I put this? It felt like 70% of the car for 40% of the cost, in the sense you can quantify things. So it's not really that bad. Of course, if you want the Porsche, you want the experience and all that, then you go and buy the Porsche. But it's an expensive car. Is it worth it? Well, that's, you know, is a Bugatti worth it? That's a relative question.
Yeah, it is.
And they all have different qualities. The Tesla has its immense storage capabilities, its speed, its supercharged network, its updates. The Porsche has its build quality and its driver feel, and you choose what you want and what you have the money to buy.
So I have a question. So for lots of people who are interested in electric cars here, we've all heard of the ID3, which is not coming here. Have you ever driven a Golf, and is it similar to the ID3?
Actually, I drove the latest gen, well, last gen as it were, e-Golf a few years back, and I found it very nice. I liked it a lot. Good cars, good headlights, and they swivel around corners, something Tesla don't, should. And then I drove the ID.3 recently, and it makes the Golf sim like something from middle of last week or something. It just completely obliterates it.
So, how's body roll and how's the acceleration and other things in that nature of the ID.3?
Well, it's not a Jaguar and it's not a Porsche. I mean, it is a people's car, so you know, but it is decently. It's comfortable. It doesn't fall over in corners. It's sort of fun to drive in that kind of, you know, middle of the road kind of way. So it's not very sporty. It's not overly comfortable. It's somewhere in the middle, and yeah, it's okay.
It's all right. So would you be interested in like an R32 version of the e-Golf? Do you think it would be kind of the right chassis and platform for sort of like a performance version of it, like a Golf?
Why would you mean of the ID.3?
Yeah, ID.3. The Volkswagen
Yeah.
mentioned there R version, or there will be an R version coming for the ID.3.
I would love that. That would be great fun.
Yeah, I think it'd be
Because the car looks, the front's a little bit strange, but you get used to it, and the DRLs look very nice in the dark. But towards the back, they have this spoiler, and it really cuts it off in this. I like the look of it. I've seen a lot of them on the roads here now, so you kind of grow into it, and it has potential, absolutely. So I was thinking, why couldn't VW Sporty, you know, do something with this? There was rumor once that was supposed to build this Nismo Leaf. Never happened, but you know, could be fun.
That'd be quite
yeah,
cool.
Do you remember it was a Nissan Leaf? I forgot. It's like E-Force or something, and it was going to be the all-wheel drive version.
Yeah, they spoke of that a few years ago.
Yeah, that seemed pretty interesting. Like 0 to 60 around 6 seconds, and all that. I mean, it seemed like a pretty fun car to drive from the videos I've seen, but they never produced it.
It's so sad because I've been thinking. I mean, I've driven most of my life. I have had old crap cars for, you know, just old bangers because that's what you can afford. And then you realize you're tired of using a lot of money on fixing things, and you do the math and you figure out, okay, I could actually buy a brand new electric car, at least in Norway, because we have a massive taxation on the cars in Norway. They're very, very expensive. And what the politicians decided to do is to remove those taxes for the electric cars. So the price parity is different, and among other things, that's why they sell, because they're relatively cheap. So I financed the Kia Soul, and I saved money because I didn't have to pay for things breaking down all the time. But I don't think the manufacturers have realized. For the first of all, electrics is the big democratizer of power. There's no other there's no other kind of, you know, you get horsepower in electric cars that you just don't see anywhere else at that price point in that class. And to build a Halo car, a Nismo or a Mugen or whatever of for instance a Leaf or what have you, you made some Nismo Duke. They made 6 of them or something. They were expensive, but they were Halo
600 horsepower.
You know. Yeah, they're crazy, but they created a lot of press.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, but I don't think they understand, and I don't think they understand. You have the platform, you have the battery pack, you have done that, you've done the heavy, you know, you've thrown the big money at it to put in a bit more powerful engine or a bit more powerful fuse box or whatever you need. It isn't that much more expensive, and you can take you know, charge a lot more for it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they could even make it a option for, who knows, 2,500, 5,000 more to have an all-wheel drive version with double the horsepower, and I think that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and you're basically printing money.
Yeah.
So I've heard you're driving the Xiaopeng P3. I think is it on Friday? Is there
G3? I think. Yeah, on Friday. This Friday.
Yeah, this Friday. is there any like preconceptions you have for the car before you drive it, or?
Not really. I know Björn tested it a while back, but and I've seen it actually in Oslo, by a pure accident. I was walking by there. Many people say, "Oh, I will never buy anything from China's a dilemma because they make the world's best products. They make every product you use in your life, most of them. And the political system and the way they treat people are disastrous. It's really, 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 really not bad. But you can't really overlook them, and you can't not, you have to. And the cars, okay, they're relatively cheap. They don't have the fit and finish of, say, an Audi. And they've basically lifted off every free patent Tesla could throw at them. But they give you a lot of car for the money. And I think they should be overlooked at your peril, because people buy. If you take Kia, Hyundai, 15 years ago, they were cheap crap cars no one wanted to buy. Now they build really good products, and the Chinese are going to do the same journey. They're just going to use 5 years of getting there. So I'm going to be very, very interested to see how this car actually feels and how it runs and how it is to experience and how the user interface are, and how quickly they've learned to do things properly. Because many European manufacturers still don't know how to do this properly.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see how because I've seen the UI in there, it looks pretty similar to Tesla, and that would just be interesting. And not to mention the windshield. I mean, a lot of the cues are taken from the Model X. It'll be interesting to see what you think about it.
Yeah, it's a scaled down Tesla in many ways. And it's a scaled down Tesla at half of the price. And you can say, okay, you don't get 1 million horsepower, but who cares? What are you going to do that anyway, And you get decent range. Don't know the charge speeds, because in my mind, you need the range up to a certain X. And then everything above that is then charge speed gets important, because then you're traveling, and then you need charge speed. You don't necessarily need that more range. Now I run a small Peugeot, the E208, and it's a good little car, but the user interface, rubbish. Even today I was looking for something. I got lost in 4 submenus before I found it. If the G3 have copied the Tesla's user interface, they're the best menu system in the world, because it's all tabs. You never get lost anywhere. You just find it, and then you're out again.
And the responsiveness of the Tesla screen is amazing. When you compare it to some of the other competitors, where you like click and then you wait a couple seconds and then the whole screen refreshes.
No, I completely agree with that. I think Tesla got it perfectly with it's basically like pressing physical buttons where you press it and it's instant. And I think the best thing that it should be. Everything
it is the best thing since sliced cheese, except for one thing: they don't have haptic feedback.
Yes, I was saying that too.
That's what. Yes, Andrew was talking about that.
I mean, I think that would be perfect if they have a couple haptic motors, maybe 4 of them, or I mean, whatever, but 4 of them, 1 for the top quadrant, or 2 for the top quadrants and 2 for the bottoms, so you know when you're clicking on something that you're actually clicking, not just, because especially if you're driving and you try to like turn down your AC. I don't know why this light's flickering, it's creeping me out, but when you click on something, it's hard to tell if you've actually clicked on it, and then you got to take your eyes off the road. And then, so yeah, I agree. The haptics would be.
Benefit. You get used to any system, and I get used to like the Kia Hyundai. I also had an Ioniq, and before that, Soul was the first electric car I bought. They have a relatively decent user interface as well, and you get used to everything. So, and you don't really look that much at the screen, as long as you have good steering wheel buttons that you can run most things of. You don't really look. But I agree with you. The Audi and the VW and the Porsche all have haptic feedback, and it really does make a difference, because you don't have to look. You can just glance and guide your way, and then you know you hit the button or not. And the Ioniq is a very underrated car, by the way.
Hmm. So you said you owned one?
Yeah, I had it as a wait car for 7 years. I said 7 years, 7 months between the Kia Soul and the Tesla. I've ordered the Tesla, but it didn't arrive in a while, and then
Yeah. So the Ionic is, if I was right in my research, it's an air-cooled battery, correct?
Probably yes. There's some fans running there, but the nice thing about it, unlike the Leaf, you can basically quick charge it all day, and it doesn't really degrade anywhere in speed, not much anyway. It doesn't matter. And the old one, at least, there's I think it was 2016 to last year, that topped out at 65 kilowatts peak charge speed, and that gives even though the range isn't all that much, it charges relatively quickly. In the new one, they've upped the range, but the charge time, the peak charge rate, and thus the charge time has fallen almost by 50%, which is strange.
It's interesting. And trying to think about what else about the Ionic. So how would you say the interior quality is on the Ionic versus, let's say, the Tesla, for instance? And I'm not sure what trim you had.
Had everything, I think, apart from sunroof. But as with all Kia Hyundai cars, most of them anyway, at least in Europe, I don't know how it is in America. In typical Asian car building fashion, they don't. I mean, they're well-built cars. They're just not built like an Audi, but they will never break down. They're like a Mazda. Everything is where you expect it to. It's a little bit boring, but they're solid and they're kind of traditional and slightly boring. But they're, so if you want a car and you don't care about anything else, they're great, and they give you a lot of equipment for the price. Like, for instance, you have heated steering wheel, heated and cooled seats, and backup cameras and all that stuff. If you want that in a Mercedes, for instance, say an A-Class, or whatever, or take the e-Niro, and then you can compare it to the Audi e-tron. If you want, if you pretend they're at the same base price, they're not, but if you pretend they are, if you want to spec one up to the level of the other, you have, I think you can add at least $20,000 to that.
Yeah, I know the e-tron is definitely, I've been playing around on the configurator, and the options, those go up quick. But then you get stuff that, like, the soft closed doors are nice, but I'm not buying an e-tron, obviously, but I mean, to spend, I forgot how much money, but it's several $1,000s to upgrade with the trim to get that, and I don't really see that as something that's absolutely worth it.
There are two, or at least there were 5 years ago, and I don't know how it is now. There are basically two brands carrying the entire VW group financially. Almost only two brands, at least on the mass market, and that's Audi and Porsche. VW as a brand, losing money. Seat, they never really got Seat to work anywhere. It's just a lost project. They have fun. Skoda, I'm sure they make money on them, but not really massively. So why? Because they are high premium brands that can take basically unlimited amount of money from their customers, paying for everything. So you can. The good thing about the German car is that you can get anything you want. If you want a bright yellow seat with a cow on top of it, you can. You just have to pay for it. With, say, a Lexus or a Toyota or a Kia, you get that car, but you get all the equipment for free in the car. So it's two different ways of thinking and two different philosophies. Is one better than the other? Well, that depends partly on how you like things and also partly on your wallet, I imagine.
Yeah, I agree. So, anyways, it looks like our free time limit is ending on Zoom because probably upgrade soon. I liked all the
Sorry
points.
about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it was a good
So
conversation. We
yeah,
had a
it's
good
very
structured
interesting.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think
interesting.
it's interesting to take a look at what other people thinks about certain electric cars. I mean, I think still the stigma in the entire market is electric cars are boring besides Tesla. I mean, people
Mhm.
know about the Taycan and stuff like that, but in general, people's perspective of electric cars is quite low. I know in Norway it's a little bit different, but especially here,
We still have our fights. I just had one now with a diesel head. Your diesel is the best. No, go away.
yeah. So I think it's always important to talk to other people who've driven other cars. I think 95% of electric cars are more fun than most of your standard
100%.
petrol diesel cars.
Single one of
And
them are
it
more
doesn't have
fun.
to be expensive too.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a Fiat 500e. I test drove one. It was $4,900, and it was very fun to drive. I mean,
It is. It
that's
is great fun. It's
yeah,
a crap car, but it's a huge laugh to drive.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a Twizy, you know. It's like 0 to
Have
60,
anyone of you
almost
driven it with you?
never
no,
driven
I
a
have
Twizy.
not.
I
No,
I'd
would
me
like
learn it.
to.
neither. But I always wanted to because
Possibly on your
it just
YouTube
looks
channel.
so bonkers
I love.
and mad.
I
And
would
then it
love.
has scissor doors on top of that.
Yeah. But
But
I
that's an
do.
option. The system
Yeah.
doors. It doesn't come with doors.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh,
Not
Yeah.
really.
It's
No.
the option.
At
Yeah.
least not here. The doors are an option if you want weather protection.
Yeah. Or if you want windows as well, which is like, which shouldn't be an option, but is an option.
It is basically a quadricycle, but it is Renault is a pretty big. Is it Renault?
Renault. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a relatively big car maker, Renault Nissan, and they actually made something like this and put it in production. I think the only one that done something similar is Chrysler in the 90s and early 2000s. They had some crazy concepts, and they made them. They built the Viper, for instance, and the
mhm.
USC and a few other things. That also were pretty crazy cars. VW would have never done that ever because it's too risky.
Yeah. Yeah. I see Volkswagen go for very not risky. I mean, you take a look at the ID3 and it's not pushing the boundaries of looks. It's not pushing the boundaries of performance. It's kind of like your average electric car, but it's still good. And I was wondering, like, would you consider purchasing an ID4 or an ID3 in replace of I don't know.
If I didn't have a Tesla, it's a decent car. I mean, it's a good product. So yes, it's a little bit pricey maybe in some regards, particularly the ID3. The ID4 will be huge though, because we're in
Definitely in the
Norway. And
US.
Norway, yeah, and it would be. I mean, SUVs are the biggest market, the biggest market in the world, and it's been so for the last 15 years. But no, I would never stick to my Tesla. I will change it out when they come with the smaller European-friendly car. Because one thing the small French car reminded me of, it's very decent to have a small car with an actual turning circle around it, so you can get around things. But,
Yeah, because around here, Model 3 is the compact car, so it's really
I
easy
know.
to drive around here. It's just the turning
You've
circle.
built your society around the car. We built our society around Romans 2,000 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was this narrow.
Yeah. So we have 30 seconds left of this free Zoom period. I'd like to thank you for coming on. Very interesting
Yeah.
conversation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming, and I will happy to come another time.
Yep,
Yeah,
sounds
we're
good.
happy to have you on again. It's
Happy to have you.
all right. Bye.